We are now in late October and we've picked most of our orchard. You can kind of look behind you. See, all the trees are pretty bare at this point. There are only a few varieties left, one of them being Enterprise, which we're just picking now. And Enterprise is, well, it's a late variety. Beautiful white flesh, dark red skin. I mean, you know, this is definitely out of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs here. It's a pretty sweet apple, crispy, juicy, kind of soft flesh though, not a very firm flesh. One thing that I wanted to talk about is a little bit about how we tell when apples are ripe. So it's pretty obvious when they're really tiny, small, and green that they're not ready yet. But there are a bunch of different indicators. One is pushing with your finger just slightly on the fruit. And if you feel a tiny give to it, that's one indication. Another is when they come off the tree pretty readily. So you never want to yank an apple off the tree because apples have fruiting buds that last for many, many years. So this is the fruiting bud right here. And when an apple is ready, if you just tip and twist, it should come off quite easily like that. But if you have to yank and pull, if you're trying to bend it kind of the opposite direction and it's not coming off, then it's probably not ready to pick. Another way to tell is, I don't have a knife with me, but maybe I can bite into this. Very good. The color of the seeds, and I'm talking with my mouth full here, but when the seeds, when it's not ready, it'll be very green. When they are ready, the seeds turn dark. But one thing that we've learned over the years is certain varieties can be picked with the seeds green, and they start dropping before the seeds turn dark. So if all your apples, if you're walking by your trees, and a bunch of apples are dropping on the ground and the trees are starting to self-thin, that's also an indication that they're ready to pick. I guess it's not really truly self-thinning because it's happening right. It's basically that they're ready. They're so ripe that they're falling off the trees. So that's another indication of ripeness. Anyway, we're just starting to harvest the Enterprise apples. We've harvested most of the trees in the last few days, and this is the last one. We have found for ourselves, we harvest into these plastic bulb crates. And then we put these macerated paper pads in the bottom that are used for tomato boxes. And I feel like one of the misnomers of, I don't know, it's not really a Hollywood movie. I don't know how many Hollywood scenes there are about people picking apples, but I feel like I've seen visuals of people, you know, harvesting and throwing apples into bins and then dumping a box of apples into a bin or something. You can't do that if you're going to sell them. They get bruised very easily, and oftentimes the bruising won't show up right away. It'll show up a few days later. So when we harvest, we do have some aprons and we have backpacks, but we found again that we just get too much bruising. So, I mean, we have like a small apron that I don't have on that we can harvest a few into, and then we'll kind of squat down and lay it in the bin and push them out. But for the most part, most of our apples are on dwarving or semi-dwarving rootstock, and therefore aren't too tall, so we can kind of move around the tree without getting on any ladders. And we pick. We evaluate for quality somewhat. So if it's something that's not going to be sellable, this has a bunch of fruit fly damage, then we put those into different bins, and we don't actually harvest more than a couple layers deep. And again, we use these. We have, if you're looking for bulb crates, there are shorter ones and taller ones. So this is one of the shorter ones, and we can't really fit more than about 2 layers. And we like that because what we find is that when we do them deeper, there's just more of a chance for bruising. We have looked into using the cardboard apple boxes with trays in them. The problem with that is the trays are based on the sizing of the apple, and our orchard is small enough and we're not sizing as we pick, so it can be tricky to figure out how to box. And then the other problem with those apple boxes is that if you stack 10 of them tall, the corners get mashed and your product can get damaged. So for storage, we pack everything into this, and then when we're wholesaling, then we do a second sort and we'll pack into apple boxes for the customer. But most of our sales are direct to consumers, so we don't actually deal with having to put them into apple boxes ever. We just send to the market like this, and we ask that our market staff don't dump them out, and we put them on, we try to sort them so they look beautiful. They stay in the crates so that there's less handling and less bruising. So one of the things that can happen in the late season here for us on the Central Coast is sunburn. So these apples, a bunch of our varieties this year ended up dropping all their leaves, we think related to mite pressure, which we've never had before. We had a very unusual wet winter with a lot of flooding, and we think it kind of messed up the balance of things. But this variety, Enterprise, has a thicker skin and seemed to withstand a lot of the damage, and the trees have looked beautiful. But then towards the end of the season, it's one of the later varieties, it starts to drop leaves, and as the leaf cover drops, then that late Indian summer, we always have a couple heat waves towards the end of the year, can cause, this was a really hot day. We got into the 80s and upper 80s, maybe like low 90s, which rarely happens here. And it basically just cooked, you know, they're all oriented in the same way you can see it. It cooked corners of the fruit that were pointed towards the sun, which is a huge bummer because we've been waiting all year for these delicious apples. And that can happen. There's a balance between picking the fruit at its optimal stage of ripeness versus profitability and picking it to save the most of the fruit. So some of our varieties, like we have like whatever strain of Gravenstein we have, if we pick it at optimal ripeness, it's all on the ground. It drops all of its fruit before the seeds even turn brown. And we have to be so on it if we want to get any harvest off of it. So there's always kind of a balance between picking when the fruit is truly ripe versus making sure that you don't lose fruit. In the first couple years of our orchard, we tried going through and picking the same trees 3 or 4 times because not every piece of fruit ripens at the same time. So a certain percentage of the fruit will be ripe and then other percentages aren't quite as ripe. And we would come back in these waves. This was pretty inefficient and led to incredible organization issues in our walk-in. So, and difficulty in marketing as well, because if we only pick 6 crates, then the next week we pick 10 crates, I have to wait till I have maybe 30 or 40 crates to start selling it. So there are advantages to just picking everything at once. The other problem was that we ended up with pallets with mixed up and jumbled varieties, and we would lose track of the inventory and what we actually had to offer and sell. So we've shifted towards determining when the majority of the fruit is ripe before we start losing it to it falling on the ground and then picking everything. And one of the things we found is that a lot of varieties, they'll continue to ripen another week or two's worth of ripeness off the tree. Some varieties do it better than others. Mutsu is one that we're just picking now, and it really shouldn't be eaten off the tree because its flavor like improves with storage in a way that it doesn't when it's on the tree. And once we put it in that cooler, we wait 2 to 3 weeks, and you would take a bite of each of those apples, one off the tree and one off the cooler, and the one off the cooler, every person there's just a universal result from taste testing that the ones that are stored taste better. So Enterprise has a particularly thick skin, and we're not seeing it as much on these trees. But one problem with waiting till ripeness is that this time of the year, yellow jackets and wasps become a major pest, and in a day or 2, they can take out an entire tree or an entire variety. They can make little holes, just 1 or 2 in every single fruit, and leave you with nothing that's sellable. And I had a couple trees in the front yard that they were extra, and I stuck them in the front yard. And I was waiting, because they weren't quite ready. Oh, they weren't just quite, maybe just another week. And I came back in another week, and I got 3 fruit off the entire tree, because every single fruit had been eaten, had some hole in it, and it started to rot from yellow jackets. So that's something to be aware of. Again, this balance between, do you wait for that optimal ripeness and lose 50% or a third of your crop? Or do you pick a little early and have a slightly underripe apple? But maybe you make money.